Mark Caro, and welcome to episode 48 of Caropop. Our guest this week is Glenn Mercer, singer, songwriter, and guitarist for the Feelies. I confess I was especially excited to talk with Mercer because 1, the Feelies are one of my favorite bands on record and on stage, and 2, if you've seen the Feelies, you've noticed that Mercer doesn't talk much. He's not a verbose lyricist to begin with, and as he stakes out his position on the house left side of the stage, he lets his music do the talking, with many guitar tunings in between. So this is a rare opportunity to hear him open up about this mysteriously beautiful, powerful band's creative processes. Mercer and rhythm guitarist Bill Million, who co-writes a lot of the songs, had a distinct vision for this New Jersey-based band. Wanting to sound like no other band playing at CBGB's, they merged the plain-spokenness of the Velvet Underground and the Modern Lovers with aspects of African drumming and ambient music and a melodic pop sensibility. From the start, the Feelies intended to dispense with rock band cliches. To Mercer, that meant, in part, singing in a lower register with his voice no more prominent than any other instrument. The Feelies also avoided playing cymbals on the drum kit, opening up the soundstage for everything else, including much added percussion. With their first album, the landmark Crazy Rhythms from 1980, Mercer and Million, plus drummer Anton Fear and bassist Keith D'Annunzio, created nervous guitar music to live up to the album title. Asserting complete control, they inserted long, quiet stretches and intense build-ups, such as the beginnings of Loveless Love and Forces at Work. Then there were the frenzy of Face La and the title track, and a highly caffeinated cover of the Beatles' Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except Me and My Monkey. Yet there wasn't a second Feelies album with Fear and D'Annunzio. Why didn't they stick around? A side project called The Tripes included all 5 members of the next lasting incarnation of the Feelies. The Feelies lineup for more than 35 years has included drummer Stan Demeski and percussionist Dave Weckerman, with Brenda Sauter providing tuneful, propulsive bass lines, Million strumming up a storm, and Mercer offering fluid guitar lines that sing. Peter Buck from REM produced The Good Earth, which came 6 years after Crazy Rhythms and showcased the band's shift into largely acoustic music that sacrificed no power or velocity. From the opener, On the Roof, it's irresistible. What was Buck's main contribution? Slipping into Something, that album's epic roller coaster ride, appears in Jonathan Demme's movie Something Wild, and the band also performs as the Willies in the high school reunion scene. How did Demme get in touch with them? How close did the filmmaker get to making a Feelies concert film before directing Talking Heads Stop Making Sense? A&M Records signed the Feelies for its next album, Only Life. What does Mercer think was the band's main concession sound-wise to the major label? How did he come up with that indelible guitar solo on Higher Ground? Time for a Witness from 1991 was the band's attempt to recapture its loud live sound. Like all Feelies albums, it's great driving music. The single sooner or later whizzed past, and the band still played it faster live. Yet this was not a happy time for the Feelies, and they broke up soon afterward. Mercer explains. He formed a new band, Wake Ulu, with Weckerman on drums. It continued the aggressive approach of Time for a Witness, but with a keyboardist, just one drummer, and no second guitarist. Mercer's 2007 solo album, Wheels in Motion, included contributions from just about every past Feelie except for Million. Did Mercer ever consider calling it a Feelies album? Million did rejoin for reunion shows in 2008, and the band has been back together ever since. It released its first album in 20 years, Here Before, in 2011, and the more pastoral In Between in 2017. On those albums and on stage, the Feelies, who rarely tour beyond driving distance from New Jersey, continue to prove they have not lost a step. Please enjoy this Caropop conversation with Glenn Mercer. The last time I saw you was in Jersey City. I think it was November 1st or something like that. I told a friend of mine that when we were out of the pandemic, which obviously we still are not, but when we were going back to concerts again, that I was going to fly out to New Jersey from Chicago and see the Feelies, and that would be my back from the pandemic, back to seeing live music event, because I couldn't think of any band I wanted to see more while I was in lockdown than the Feelies.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
I feel like the Feelies are actually like one of the sort of foundational bands in rock, and that you guys created a sound that, even though there are traces of other bands that have preceded you, like there are traces of other bands in the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all of these other things, that there's a distinct sound to every Feelies record that sets it apart from kind of anything else that exists in music. Like I will listen to the Feelies because I want the Feelies, not because I'm in the mood for hard rock or something like that. It's because I want that specific thing. Did you always have in mind that what you were doing was going to be kind of so specific and identifiable as you?
Well, it was a goal. Yeah, I remember particularly, I think it was actually before the Feelies started, or right around that time, there was a festival, a summer festival at CBGB's, and ran about a month long, pretty much every night, I think. And probably had about 5 or 6 bands each night. So just like a ton of music being made. And that was the thing that really hit me the most, like how each band, to stand out, you had to have some kind of unique quality. So, yeah, when we first started, we were just basically a garage band, kind of generic kind of a sound with influences, 60s in particular. But, it wasn't until we started, 2 things happened. We started to take things out that we felt were really cliche and been done to death. And then also accepting influences from beyond traditional kind of rock and roll. So we were listening to African drumming records and big band music, ambient stuff. Just
what were the things that you took out?
Well, we took out cymbals. We didn't use a lot of cymbals. That's kind of what opened up the space to kind of invited the use of percussion and, just different sounds to fill up that space.
What about the cliches?
Well, I guess the way I sang, is not real, don't project like a typical lead singer would, I guess. So
right. You're not crooning, and you're certainly not a front man who's making, a show of being a front man.
Right. Yeah. And, singing in a lower register, not like trying to stand out above the band, kind of integrated more into this whole sound. Nothing really supposed to be the focal point. It's like your attention can drift as the music's going. It's sort of meant to function as a whole rather than the separate parts.
When you started out being in bands and you had a band, the Out Kids, with some future members of the Feelies, did you see yourself?
Actually, was in a band prior to that. It was a couple bands prior to that. So it wasn't really when I started, but that was the first band to sort of, again, the previous band, we did perform for money. So we were semi-professional. But I guess the Out Kids was when we first started doing originals.
So what were the first earlier ones called? And what my question was whether you always saw yourself as a singer in bands or whether that's something that developed later.
It just developed, yeah. When I first started, my brother had a band and my friends were in it. And I didn't play an instrument, but I wanted to. So I got a guitar and it was a really cheap guitar. The strings were really far off the neck. So I didn't get very far on it. And then, I don't know if I thought of it or somebody suggested, well, why don't you try the bass? It's like only 4 strings. So actually, when I first started, it was the acoustic guitar with a microphone stuck in it, just playing the bottom 4 strings.
Huh.
And, like in my neighborhood, everybody played, but there weren't any bass players. So it's like, immediately being able to fit into a band just because I was, something they needed. So,
did playing bass key you more into the rhythms then?
I think so. And I think it also influenced the way I pick. I didn't really analyze my picking style, but one time I happened to focus in my hand and I realized I was, during a lead, upstroking actually more than downstroking. I thought, well, most people don't do that. And I thought it was probably from when I played the bass, I played both with my fingers and a pick, but typically you're plucking from below pulling the string up. I think it has a subtle difference in sound as well.
Right. At what point did you move to guitar then?
Well, actually, the band prior to the Outkids, we did a few songs. I remember we did like a Woodstock set because that was real big at the time when the album came out.
Right.
And we did songs by bands that played at Woodstock, and we did Pinball Wizard, and I figured out the intro. Well, I always kind of picked up guitar along with the bass. My friend had really good guitars, so whenever I went to his house, I'd always play his guitar, and I kind of learned from that without actually having a guitar. But then in that band, we did Pinball Wizard, and I figured out the intro, so I showed the guitar player, and he's like, well, why don't you just play it? So we switched instruments for that, and then we did a medley of I'm a Man, Chicago Transit's version. It's got that percussion break.
Right.
And Soul Sacrifice by Santana, which also has a percussion break. So we'd start with one, and then we'd go into a percussion break, and all of us would play percussion. And then we would switch, and I'd take the guitar and play the Soul Sacrifice. That's when I first started playing lead. So, it was kind of both simultaneous. And then by the time we got to the Outkids, I was just playing guitar.
Were there guitarists who you were sort of admiring or emulated at that point, or and did that sort of change over time?
Well, if I liked someone, I didn't not ever not like them. So yeah, but there were definitely guitarists that had big influence on me. Pete Townsend, Carlos Santana, Dave Davies, the Beatles, Keith Richards, right. Brian Jones, and then later on the Velvets, MC5 were a big influence guitar-wise. But Robert Fripp, huge influence.
Oh, sure. I can hear that.
And only recently did I really think back to how huge of an influence Mick Ronson was. Dave and I now play in a band. It's a tribute to that period in music. We do a lot of Bowie. And I realized, well, that was right when actually the year that Ziggy Stardust came out was the year I bought my first electric.
Oh, wow.
So that record, pretty much everything he did, his work on the Transformer record really impressed me. Phil Manzanaro's another one.
Yeah, I mean, because something in which is true of Lou Reed and a lot of some of these other guys too, is that there's no sort of bluesy kind of stuff going on in your playing, and it's also a very clean tone, and you seem very in control of what the tone's going to be. And then there's also the rhythm playing, which can be very aggressive and rhythmic, and then the leads have this kind of fluid, but not. It seems like you're intentionally like not trying to do the kind of bluesy sort of leads there.
I just play what pops into my head. I don't set out to do any particular thing. I think, what suits the song. I think if you listen to all my playing, it's like really varied.
It is.
There are like a song like Deep Fascination. It's very kind of bluesy. The good leads, a lot of bending and.
I'll have to think about that because I love Deep Fascination, and then it goes right into Higher Ground, which has this fantastic guitar solo that just hits all these different tones and sounds and everything else. And I was going to ask you later, but maybe I'll ask you now just about how you even came up with that, and if that's something where you're playing it once and when you're performing it or something, and that's what you come up with, or whether it's something that you're actually sort of sitting down and kind of working out bit by bit.
Well, it varies. For Higher Ground, I did have a demo. I think it was pretty spontaneous, but some things are kind of worked out. It's usually about 50-50 on a record. Things that I work out, things that I just improvise.
Yeah, because on Higher Ground, again, you have like these low parts of it and these kind of soaring parts, and it just hits so many different tones in it. And it's really like, I remember playing that when it came out, and like for a girlfriend, and she's like, wow. And then she came back the next day. She's like, I played this for my dad and he thought it was amazing. I'm like, well, good. You're turning your dad into a Feelies fan.
Well, thanks.
Do you remember the first song that you wrote?
It was a song in the Outkids. I didn't write the vocal, but I wrote the guitar.
Did you do the music first and then someone wrote the lyrics on top of it, or was it the other way around?
It was the music first, yeah. I actually remember writing the bulk of it without a guitar. Just thought it in my head and remembered it. So,
and then you kind of transcribed it on the instrument after you...
Yeah.
Do you write like that a lot, or do you usually have the instrument with you?
Typically it'll be with an instrument, but I do come up with, like, if I don't have a guitar, I could, like if I have a melody I want to remember, I could just, in my head, know the notes and write them down. And I might make a note of how many beats each note is held. But I can do that without a guitar.
Like when I think of a melody in my head, I'll take out, like now I used to do it with, I used to call my voicemail at work. Then when I had a digital recorder, I do it in that. Now you could do it in a voice memo on the phone, but you're actually writing down what the notes are.
Yeah.
So, that's an A sharp and that's a this and that. Is that do you just have perfect pitch that way, or did you train yourself to do that?
It's definitely from training. I didn't always have that. It's just, I've been playing music for so long. I know what an A sounds like or a C sounds like. If I hear a record on the radio, a lot of times that's what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, he's playing these chords and I won't have a guitar. So I'll just, in my head, I can hear what an A or a C or a D or an E typically sounds like. You hear it so much over the course of your life that you could recognize it.
Absolutely. And when you write normally, in general, do you tend to be a music first versus a lyrics first person?
Definitely,
do they sometimes come at this?
No, I always write the music. Usually it's the chord progression rhythm that starts it, and then the melody, and then the words.
So you'll come up with a chord progression while you're like playing on your guitar, or just when you're like walking, and then you'll figure out what it is and then go back to it?
I usually don't think of chord progressions without a guitar. Melodies, I will. I'm like you say, I might be walking or something, and a melody. I like to have an activity other than sitting down working at a melody.
Right.
You want to be doing something, and then the melody, just keep your mind free so that something could pop into it. It's not a real proactive process. Very passive. I guess the chords kind of suggest the melody.
Right.
It's almost like, I think of it like distilling or sculpting, where you're removing things, revealing things, and each step will lead you to the next.
Now, is it different when you're collaborating with someone? Like if you and Bill Million are writing a song together, is the process similar, but it's two of you, or is there something that each of you brings to the song?
Usually the songs we write together, the chords will, or at least the bulk of them, will come from Bill. And then there's been some instances where I'll suggest modulating or middle 8 break chords for that. There might be a time when, a chord might fit better with the melody I had in mind. I'll say, well, can I add this chord here? It really varies.
And then will you put the words and melody on top of that?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say, like, are there characteristics that you think distinguish his writing from yours in terms of like musical structure and chord changes and that sort of thing?
I think they're pretty similar. Like, I think we've been playing together for so long that we really have they're just very compatible.
I'll have to pull out my credits, but like, what would be an example of a song that you think of as sort of a quintessential like Bill song, as opposed to one that would be one that you came up with?
There were songs that he came up with the chords, and then there'll be a song that I came up with, and they're very similar. So I can't really think, I was going to say maybe major minor, but he's written a bunch of minor chord songs. I've written a bunch of major chord songs.
Can you think of songs he came in with that you were just like, oh, wow, that's amazing?
Well, he wrote the basic chords to Raised Eyebrows. So that I really, my contribution was, I guess, in helping arrange the song and the way I play the guitar and build each section. But that's a very kind of velvety influence that I've used as well. So I don't know.
Right. So in general, were you two pretty much, you played together and you listened to the same kind of music and like the same kind of music? Like there wasn't the sort of split where like one of you was into prog and the other one was into something else?
There's probably bands that we each like that the other might not. I don't know.
But more of your reference points are common, I would guess, than not common.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, he's not like, the Velvet Underground.
No, he's probably a bigger fan than I am.
So Crazy Rhythms, which has raised eyebrows on it from 1980. So that's so it's a different lineup, obviously, from the Feelies albums that followed. Was the process of making that album different from the other ones as well? I mean, it was the first album that you'd made.
That record, it was pretty typical, which is basically play the songs live with the idea of getting the bass and drums. And then I think that after that, we might have focused more on keeping more guitar because we had some little bit of difficulty replacing guitars or getting the guitars to sound good.
And you had one drummer on that, Anton Fierce, so you hadn't added Dave as the percussionist on top of it. And yet there's obviously a lot of rhythm going on. I mean, the name of the album is Crazy Rhythms. How much were you kind of thinking about, I don't know, again, that percussive element when you were making that record?
Well, a lot. There's a ton of percussion on it. We thought Anton would play the percussion. And when he finished the basic tracks with the drums, he said, "See you guys." We're like, "Well, you're not coming back?" And he's like, "No, I'm done." So Bill and I played all the percussion.
Really?
Out of necessity, really.
Was that him being done with the album, or was that when he was done with the band?
That was done with the record, with the album. It kind of hinted at maybe, I don't know, wasn't a team player, to put it that way, maybe.
Huh. Yeah, because there's obviously a ton of percussion on it, but I don't think I realized that you guys are the ones playing it. It's just this album that, again, you're playing at CBGB's, and you're part of this sort of, I don't know if it's fair to say scene, but that album kind of stands like when I was in college when I heard that for the first time. So it was a few years after it come out, and I was just like, this is just like nothing else. Again, how in control of that were you, and how important was it for you to also be in control, like not to have like an outside producer putting his imprint on it, for you to have like these long sort of silences between songs and these slow fade ups?
It was essential. It was totally conceptual in the fact that we had recorded prior to Crazy Rhythms, and actually the Rough Trade single was the first time we worked on our own, and that came out really good. So we were determined to do Crazy Rhythms as well. We had one experience with a producer. It didn't go too well, so we kind of stuck to our guns, and that was part of the deal when we were signing the record deal, that we had interest from other labels, but wouldn't allow us to produce. So
I was going to ask whether you dealt with outside producers, if you had a bad experience with that. What was that? What happened?
Well, it really wasn't that horrible in retrospect. It was we did some recording for Orc Records. He put out a lot of New York underground stuff, and the producer said, "Why don't you guys go to dinner, take a break? I'll do a rough mix." And when we came back, it just sounded so foreign to what kind of heard in our heads. And, rather than talk through it, we were just like, "Oh no, we hate this. This sucks." Like, we're going to do it.
And you and Bill, again, you knew exactly, both of you, what you wanted it to sound like.
No, we didn't know exactly what we wanted it to sound like. We knew exactly what we didn't want it to sound like.
So, and then that album came out on Stiff Records, known at the time, I think, for Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe, and those bands. Did that help in any way? Did it make a difference what label it was on?
I memean, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I think it was great that Stiff allowed us to make the record, and they gave us a pretty big budget for it. But we always joked that they kind of boasted that they made as much money from selling T-shirts and the merchandising that they did from the records. And I think we heard someone say they're like, "Oh yeah, we always wanted to sign a band with glasses," like I guess they wanted like a few Elvis Costellos in the same band.
Right. Yeah, not that you guys sound anything alike, but
yeah, they really weren't happy with the way it came out, to be honest with you.
Was there ever going to be another Feelies album with that lineup?
We, I guess, hoped to do that. We were kind of moving in a different direction. We kind of thought, well, we don't want to do the same thing again. In a way, we had felt a little bit backed into a corner in terms of certain tempo and featuring the percussion. It just seemed like ran the risk of possibly becoming like a formula in a way. And I remember the first song that we worked on after Crazy Rhythms was When Company Comes. So it's sort of like kind of knew we were moving away from that sound. And also, right. I think the New York scene was kind of dying down at the time. So we weren't feeling as inspired by what was going on in New York. Started getting into, more underground bands from throughout the country, really. I guess a lot of it was coming from like college towns. Meat Puppets and Dream Syndicate and Husker Du and Rain Parade. And, New York wasn't the center anymore.
Did you feel like your writing was changing as well? I mean, obviously When Company Comes is a different sort of song.
Well, that's what I mean. We didn't want to repeat ourselves and make Crazy Rhythms Volume 2. We wanted to be able to explore. We've always been about really experimenting and exploring stuff. That's where the fun is.
So how did you end up like losing Anton and Keith? Did they leave at the same time, or was it just sort of
No, Anton left first. He had been playing with the Lounge Lizards, and he really wanted to play a lot, and we didn't.
You didn't want to like sort of fly over all around the place at that time either.
We didn't even want to play in New York a lot. We play a couple times a year.
And then so he left, and then Keith was your bassist, and he'd been with you for a while. And how did he end up out? And then how did you end up sort of coming up with this new lineup, which like I have that Tripes record.
Pretty kind of natural evolution. I guess the Feelies kind of went on after Anton left. We just kind of went on a hiatus. We didn't really ever say we were breaking up. We actually, and Anton kind of came back. We did some shows actually with, after Stan joined, we did some shows with both Anton, Stan, and Dave. So it was like 3 drummers.
Wow.
But the main thing, I guess, was that I started playing with the local band, the Tripes, and I actually played drums when I first joined up with them. Well, more percussion really than drums, and it wasn't a full kit. And then we started the Willies, which was like to play more ambient kind of music. Well, I guess first we hooked up with Stan, and then Brenda was friends with John Baumgartner's sister, I think. So we kind of got to know her, and she started playing with the Tripes and the Willies. And we just, I guess, started, again, we didn't want to keep repeating ourselves. So the Willies ambient stuff took that as far as we could, and then started writing songs again.
Right. And you had a Tripes album too, but the Tripes was never going to be the main thing. It was still, the Feelies was still going to be the main thing and not the Tripes.
We didn't really think in terms of main and offshoot, really. That's the way it's kind of perceived, and it was that way once the Feelies started back up. But during the hiatus, it was never, a hierarchy of which bands warrant the most attention.
Right.
We pretty much did it on a social level, just playing with friends, really.
Because it wound up being
we've never been good about like forging a career.
And it wound up being like 6 years between Crazy Rhythms and The Good Earth, which came out in 86. And Peter Buck worked on that. How did you work with him? And how did you get him involved? And B, sort of what What did he do with you guys? While obviously he didn't mess up your sound, because that's a great sounding record.
Well, we actually, he did a little bit of an interview for the reissue, and he talks in the booklet that, he admits he didn't do anything. He was basically there just to encourage us. He didn't want to really get involved with the sound of the band. He got involved through, we started hanging out a lot at this club called Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Right. That was your sort of home
became really
base.
good friends with the owner. And he ran Coyote Records, so we got to record for his label. And he was friends with REM, and we were at a party. And Peter approached me, and he said, "Yeah, I really like Crazy Rhythms, and I heard you guys are going to be doing another record, and I'd love to help out." And the fact that Steve introduced us and he was going to put the record out just felt like, okay, be a good fit, I guess.
Did you like what he'd been doing with REM as well?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. If we didn't, we wouldn't have wanted to work with him.
Right. I've heard you guys cover Shaking Through, which sounded fantastic. Boxcars as well. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. We did that. There was a REM tribute concert at Carnegie Hall that we were very honored to be invited to perform at. And we did the Boxcars at that.
Did REM kind of help things along in other ways too? Because between 80 and 86, this whole college rock thing had kind of become a thing. I mean, not to be totally redundant, but it seems like, in 1980, it was still sort of about like new wave and post-punk. And by 86, REM had toured, and there were all these bands that were sort of considered college rock bands and getting played on college rock stations and maybe playing at venues that hadn't been opened up or to that kind of band before. They helped quite a bit. They actually took us on tour during their, I think it was the Fables album, perhaps. But 85.
They, like you were saying, though, they definitely, I think, helped revitalize music. They helped establish a whole network of clubs in small towns, college towns mostly. But we always say that when Crazy Rhythms came out, we wanted to tour. There was no venues other than the major cities. We'd probably have to fly from New York to Chicago and to the West Coast. And, they, from a few years of touring, enabled the scene had changed enough so that when we did our first proper tour in 1984, we were able to go cross country and play all those small towns.
I love the Good Earth. When the Good Earth came out, I mean, I enjoyed Crazy Rhythms too, and admired it a lot. And then the Good Earth just sort of grabbed me in this totally different way. And it's not a different band, but it's definitely a different approach. Just like the Velvet Underground's third album is much different from White Lightweight Heat. Were you thinking going into this, we want to do sort of more of a, again, you have One Company Comes, which you mentioned, which is just this totally lush acoustic, multiple acoustic guitar strumming rhythmic thing. Were you thinking at that time we want to do this kind of almost sort of pastoral acoustic with percussion and some loud guitars on it?
Probably even the songs on Crazy Rhythms may have started out sort of like that anyway. I think when you're just sitting in your room strumming a guitar, then maybe they got sped up and the drumming took on a new presence. But I think, basically that folk element was sort of there at the beginning as well. It wasn't like a conscious effort to let's be folkier.
Yeah, I don't even think of it as folky because it's not like sort of laid back guitar picking sort of thing. I mean, you're playing fast and it makes you want to jump around, but it makes you want to jump around with acoustic guitars that are very kind of richly textured, and the rhythm playing is, it just has a lot of drive to it. But at the same time, it's not as maybe thorny as some of the stuff on Crazy Rhythms, even though obviously Slipping Into Something builds to this great crescendo of, feedback and everything else. And I don't know. It's just
not really on the record. we do it different live.
Oh, sure.
Because we, you know, actually hadn't listened to the record in a long time, and I'm always surprised by how different it is.
The first time I saw you guys was I was writing for the Boston Phoenix after I was in college, and I was living in Boston, and you guys played at, I think it was UMass Amherst, and I think it was in a cafeteria. And I just remember the energy level of that show, having, again, listened to the album of The Good Earth a lot of times and listened to Crazy Rhythms, but seeing you guys live was this totally other thing.
Yeah, I remember that show. The thing that I remember most is that for some reason we couldn't get the van anywhere near the cafeteria. Like we had to unload, and we had like huge road cases. So we had all these kids like helping out, moving these huge road cases halfway across campus, and like,
wow,
through the building, up these stairs, down these stairs, like just being logistically very weird.
Did you have in mind that, you know, the studio versions would be one thing, but the live versions would be just something else? Like it's just a different beast. It would be faster, louder, just different?
Probably on Crazy Rhythms, we had a little bit of a desire to capture the live show, but I think pretty quick we realized that, you know, if we got it to sound good, we'd be happy. We didn't really want to, you know, it's just hard enough to get all the instruments recorded properly. And then, you know, that's something that is almost evasive in the sense of, if a record has a character, an atmosphere, that it's usually the element that's, you know, not within your control. So it's either something you really like or you don't. You know, certain rooms add certain characters. Even just the way people play together, in the environment they're in, they could play differently each time. So I think that you don't really want to, it'd be like shooting yourself in the foot to say, well, I want to get it to sound this way. You have to be open to that element of the atmosphere, I guess.
Part of what's fascinating to me about it is that it's very energetic, and, you know, again, makes you want to, you know, there's music that you sort of stand and nod your head, and music that kind of fills your body. When I would put you guys in the latter category, but it's also very crisp and very precise. And, you know, there are a lot of bands that will play fast, but it's not tight at the same time, or it's not crisp. And there's something about, like, you know, just between, you know, Dave with his, you know, percussion just being exact on there, and Stan, who's such a precise and powerful drummer. And, you know, you guys are all, you're very rhythmic players, and Brenda too is melodic and rhythmic, that it's in one way very controlled, and on the other way, like it's exploding.
Well, we're all primarily, I think, motivated by the rhythm. That's the sense I get, at least. We're all driven. That's the one common element, I think, that we share. And that because of that, we're always really conscious, but not overly conscious of locking into a tight groove. You know, it comes natural, but there are times when it's not happening, we can tell. And we put some work into it. Usually it's pretty effortless, but it is something definitely aware of the importance of the groove.
And it's really all about the music, your shows too. I mean, you're not someone who starts telling stories about, like, well, this is how this one was written, or just, you know, it's just sort of like you guys come out and you play the music and people just get sucked into it. Yeah,
to me, there's nothing worse than telling a story in a song. Well, I hate country music.
When you were touring for The Good Earth and that album was out on Coyote, did you feel like, oh, now sort of things are happening with the Feelies, and that was a good thing? Because you got signed to A&M after that.
I mean, yeah, we kind of felt like we were achieving something, you know, another rung up the ladder, I guess. Yeah. You know, we never really set goals. Like, you know, just speaking for myself, like that wasn't appealing at all. Even now, I prefer small club to a bigger place.
What was it like when you did get signed to A&M, and did you Did you feel like you had to compromise your approach on Only Life, or were you happy with how that came out, or both?
At the time, I was happy with it. In retrospect, I don't like the production on that, even though we co-produced it. But I think we were conscious of radio airplay because, a lot of the bands that started, were playing the same places we were signing to major labels and getting radio airplay. So it didn't seem like a bad thing or a sellout. It seemed like we could do what we always did and still go a little more commercial or be accepted by a bigger audience.
Yeah, it's not like that album is like filled with weird synthesizers and gated drums and that sort of thing. Like, it still sounds like a Feelies record. It's a little maybe more polished sounding than what had come before it, but not like sort of.
For me, it's a little bit too much reverb on the snare, which was, everybody did that back then.
Right.
That was the sound. But Stan loves that record because the drums are so loud. So, it's all subjective, really.
And there are great songs on it.
Yeah, we were pretty confident because we had done, I think we did some demos, and early on, A&M kind of got back to us and said, yeah, you guys got some good songs, keep going.
I think the first song I heard from that was Too Far Gone because, well, I think I saw you at the Paradise in Boston and you opened with The Undertow. And I was like, oh, this is a cool song. I don't even know this one. And then when I saw Married to the Mob, I remember I think it's just a very, like, over the end credits, I was like, oh, what's this Rock and Feely song? And it was Too Far Gone. And by then you'd also been in Something Wild, which I just showed to my daughter recently. How did you guys sort of get hooked up with Jonathan Demme, and what was it like being in Something Wild?
Well, on Crazy Rhythms, we had our address on the record, mailing address. So he wrote us a little letter saying he was a fan of the band and that he was a director. At the time, he had just directed Melvin and Howard,
which is an excellent movie.
And he wanted to meet, and he arranged for us. Actually, we weren't familiar with him at all at the time. We hadn't seen that movie. It had actually just come out. So he arranged for us to get into see a showing of that movie, and we liked it a lot. So the next step was to meet. He suggested actually talking about filming a concert movie, and he said, well, why don't we meet? He arranged for a private screening of The Last Waltz. So it was just Bill and I and him watching The Last Waltz, occasionally whispering about things in the movie. But, we thought it was kind of a cool idea. But then he couldn't raise the money for it. And supposedly one of the people he approached was the manager of the Talking Heads. He was like, well, I'll put up the money, but I want you to do with the Talking Heads. So we wound up doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Stop Making Sense was 1984, so that would have been in that sort of period between, because then Something Wild was the movie he did after Stop Making Sense. So he got you on screen anyway, but you didn't get your concert film. You could have worn a big suit.
No, his idea was actually to have us playing a show, and then there'd be like zombies walking around, and they would hear the music and be drawn to the sound, and they would go into the venue and be rejuvenated and come alive, and turn back to normal.
It would be a concert film with rejuvenated zombies as your audience members?
Yeah, basically. He wanted to call it Night of the Living Feelies.
I remember hearing that title.
Well, he did work with Roger Corman, so.
Yeah, I saw Caged Heat way back when. It's a pretty strange idea, though. So he did direct.
It's probably better as an idea than reality.
Time for a Witness came out, and I don't think I was aware that was coming out when it did. And that album just kind of jumps out of the speakers. Was that sort of a conscious attempt? It's your second album for A&M, but sort of a much more sort of loud, fast record. Did you go into that thinking, okay, this is what we want to do? We want to capture that live energy this time?
Well, yeah, that's kind of suited the songs. I remember Neil Young's Ragged Glory, I think, was out at that time. And
right.
Being really into that record. Again, it was kind of a return to that early Feelies garage kind of sound. Stooges were a big influence on us. So
right, and you covered Stooges for the last song on the album.
Yeah.
Was the songwriting for you and the dynamic with you and Bill, was it the same from album to album, or did it change?
Each record is a little bit different. The process is pretty similar, but I mean, there's really, I think, only one or two songs we actually sat together across from each other and kind of worked out. I think it was the first two songs we worked on. And then it's sort of, work on our own and kind of combine what we have.
Are you talking about the first two songs for Time for a Witness, or just in general?
No, the first two in Crazy Rhythms. I think it was Original Love, and it's the only one I could think of that was written that way.
Or like Moscow Nights or Fa Se La, which you'd recorded a few different times before then.
They didn't evolve that much. They would sound different depending on who was drumming on it, but the arrangements were pretty, once we had them set, they pretty much stayed the same.
So for Time for a Witness, when you get to the end of an album, whether it's that or the previous ones, do you have this feeling of, oh, that came out well?
I only remember Crazy Rhythms sitting back after we were done, and they had a little listening room with like huge giant speakers, and just, we worked so hard on that record and just being like, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. And then other times when you're done, you just don't want to, your perspective is like, so you can't even judge it at that point. I mean, always are satisfied, but not to the point where, we say like, yeah, we really nailed it. I think the last one, we kind of had that feeling.
In between?
Yeah. I think the more effort you put into it, the more time you spend on it, then the more rewarding it seems when it comes out the way you wanted.
Yeah.
The Good Earth, when I listened to that, I'm like, I really wish we had turned the vocals up. Everybody said how cool that was that they're buried, but to me, like, we do the songs now and they just take on a different, energy, I guess. And then, like I said about the loud reverb drums and Only Life.
Right.
Little
yeah, the vocals are more up in Only Life compared to Good Earth, where they are buried. But then you also have your louder drums on it.
It's like I said, it's all subjective, really. The things that I don't like, other people, that's their favorite thing. So
how do you look back on Time for a Witness?
If I listened to it, that I'd really find a lot I'd want to change. It's more like thinking about the making of the record, really, that stands out more than the result. To me, the process is always much more important, I guess, than the result.
What stood out about that process?
Nothing particularly good. A lot of angst, which the record kind of needed, I guess.
Was that angst among the bandmates, or angst between you and the label, or just angst about career and life?
Maybe a little bit of all that. I mean, there's always a lot of angst on our records. I'm a nervous person. I'm very high strung.
Do you get joy out of recording, or is it really sort of an ordeal until you're done with it?
I love to record. There have been times when it's been harder than it should be. That's not pleasant, but every endeavor has moments of struggle.
But Time for a Witness felt more fraught than the previous records?
Yeah. I mean, Only Life was very optimistic. We just signed to a major label and things were going well. And then by the time for Witness was sort of the end of the band, we broke up right after that. So it was,
Did you know or feel like you were going to break up at that point, or was that just something that happened afterwards?
Not while we were recording it. I don't think we would have recorded it if we knew we were going to break up.
No, and I saw you by then I'd moved back to Chicago. I saw you guys at the Vic playing that show. And I think XRT, the station here, I think they even recorded it, because I think I was there for it, and I think I got to hear it on the radio sometime later.
Yeah, I think it might have been bootlegged. I think I might have had a copy at some point too.
It sounded good. I remember being impressed that Sooner or Later was even faster live than it is on the record, and it's pretty fast on the record.
Everything we do is live is faster than the record, pretty much.
Do you feel like you still try to speed everything up, or maybe not quite as much?
No, we're much more conscious of trying to match the records. We listen. For me, I listen to live tapes from back then. It just, I can't stand it. They sound uncomfortable. They're not playing that fast. Really doesn't suit the songs to me. But then, when you're doing it, and you're live.
It was fun to be there, though. It was fun to be in the middle of it. It was fun for me to perform.
I never thought while we were playing that, this is too fast. It just, you get caught up with the adrenaline and the crowd. But as far as a recording, making a document of it, it just doesn't sound right.
So what caused you guys to break up at that point after you toured for that record?
Well, a big factor was that A&M, all the people that we knew and had established a relationship with had left the company when they got bought out by Phonogram, I think it was. So, the new people coming in didn't feel the same way about the band. I think the way they left it with us was, well, we'll still put out the records, but we don't want to put a lot of money into tour support, promotion. Almost like suggesting, it's time for you guys to leave.
A&M was a weird label. They had the Mekons at the same time. That you put out Mekons Rock and Roll in '89, which in my mind is a pretty fantastic record. And then they're like, yep, you're off. We don't even want to promote you anymore. So I don't know what was happening there. There was someone with good taste was signing bands, but then they weren't giving you whatever support you guys deserved.
I see it more as them being bought out by a conglomerate.
Well, there's that too. Yeah. But them being bought out by a conglomerate doesn't mean you guys had to break up. Did you just sort of feel like, this is the end of the line for us? Were you just too discouraged or frustrated by all the business parts of it? Or musically, did you also feel like we need a break at this point?
It was a lot of stuff, nothing worth dwelling on. I think we all felt like we'd done what we wanted. It just each band, they have a lifespan.
You're doing Wake Ulu, which Chicago's Pravda was, I think they were putting out. What was the feeling of sort of putting that band together? So that was you and Dave.
That was actually a few years after the Feelies stopped playing. I guess because of the way the Feelies ended, it was to try to do something more, I guess, along the way the Tripes had been, which was basically to play music, try to have a good time, keep it more like a social kind of thing. And it actually did start that way. I had reconnected with a childhood friend, Russ Gambino, played keyboard in the band. He had just moved back to town, and I was mowing my parents' lawn, and he drove by and stopped, and we talked, and we decided to play, and we were just doing covers, me, Russ, and Dave as a trio. Russ played keyboard, bass. And then at the same time, a friend of mine who was thinking of relocating to New Jersey, we worked on some of his stuff and some of my songs. So we were going to do a band with him. And then at some point, we kind of combined the two things and tried that, and figured we'd, give it a shot. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, I remember they had this really sort of great raw energy to it.
Yeah, it was sort of like where we left from Time for Witness, that garage.
Right.
So it was sort of continuing in that vein.
And your songwriting is your songwriting, whether it's for the Feelies or whether it's for Wake Ulu or later for solo projects. But there's sort of a continuum to what you're doing, or did you ever consciously sort of try to do something with a different approach?
Semi-consciously, I guess. It's different because it's one guitar and a keyboard. So it's sort of having a vaguely defined parameter. You don't want to get too fine-tuned with your definition of what you want. You want to leave it fluid a little bit. leave that organic element of letting things take their natural course.
Right. Did you enjoy doing that at that point? Being in that band and putting out those records?
Well, I liked continuing with the music. I didn't want to stop. So that was very rewarding to be able to keep playing. We did a couple trips out to Chicago in the summer. Right. But like I said, it was really hard. It was like starting over a lot. With the Feelies, we had been touring in a motorhome and had a pretty big crew. So this was like just the band. We had a sound guy and in a van, real long drives between shows, very little money.
I've heard that you're not a big fan of traveling around also.
That's true. I mean, I don't mind playing in different places, but to travel, it's, I find it harder and harder, to be honest. Just that it's being sedentary for that long, sitting in a van, it's just like...
You did the Millennium Park show when you were coming back with Here Before. I think it was before Here Before came out, actually. It was probably like a year before that. And then you were back here for Pitchfork. But those were both these kind of outdoor shows and not the sort of long classic Feelies 2 sets kind of evenings.
Sorry. I actually have some hearing issues. And the last time I flew was actually for that Millennium Park show. And it was a pretty bad experience for me because when we landed, my ear was totally closed up.
Oh, wow.
And I have one ear that I have tinnitus and very severe hearing loss. And the other ear, I call good ear, which isn't that good anymore, was totally closed up. So it was like being in some weird vacuum. Things just sounded really bad. But luckily, we had flown in the night before, and I woke up the next morning. It was okay. It like leveled off. But then flying back, the same thing happened.
Oh, man.
And we had a show at Maxwell's, and it didn't open back up, and I had to play the whole show. It was like playing in a closet in another room or something.
So that's the last time you were on a plane?
Yeah. And I get that now, even like in a car up and down a hill, my ears constantly closing up.
Yeah, once you get out to the Midwest, you don't have to worry about it because it's so flat. But so when you played Pitchfork, you guys just drove out here, and then I think you had like a show in Detroit like the next night or something.
Right. Yeah. I
was jealous because I looked at their set list and it was longer. But it was great seeing you at Pitchfork too.
We had to cut a song, I think. They cut our set because...
Oh, someone else went too long at the other stage. I remember that. I was getting pissed off. But I also had
to expect that at a festival.
Yeah, I guess. No, I remember you guys were kind of looking over there. I think I was yelling for you guys to just keep playing. But no, and I remember there was a High Road cider that Virtue Cider had in the VIP area just for you guys because Greg Hall of Virtue is a big Feelies fan too. So backing up from that, you'd done Wheels in Motion, which was your solo album, and you kind of have everyone from the Feelies on it except for Bill. But you weren't gonna call something a Feelies record if he wasn't on it, right?
Right.
But if he had been on it, would those have been the same songs that would have been, just would have been a Feelies record?
No, I think we would have to collaborate on songs for it to be a Feelies record. My wish was to have him as well, but him being in Florida, really, I think now might be a little more possible with the internet and sharing files and recordings and stuff. I've done that with people. Actually, it's pretty easy.
So what was it that got him finally to sort of come back into the fold? Because I was excited when you guys started playing together again.
I don't really know. I mean, we talked about it for a while. We had an offer to do this show, and Bill just said, yeah. More timing than the particulars of the gig. It was opening for Sonic Youth at in New York. Outdoor show. We actually did warm up at Maxwell's before we did the Sonic Youth show.
When you all got back together, did you feel like the same angst was in the air, or was it a sort of different world, or wiser and more relaxed now?
Oh, it was different. Yeah, it was. Well, that was in the past.
In Between sounds like it's almost like a follow up to The Good Earth, and that it's a little more kind of acoustic, and then Here Before sounds like just kind of everything you like about the Feelies in, different ways.
Well, I like that they were different. We want each one to kind of like here before was done primarily at a studio, although I did some work here and we combined that. But in between, we did right here in this room, as a matter of fact, most of it.
Is that your basement?
Yeah. But that, that would turn out to be really hard work.
Yeah, In Between is a very kind of unified sound to it, which I think you're talking a little bit before, but it definitely sort of casts a spell that it sort of holds for like the whole record.
Yeah, we were trying to, have an atmosphere to it. I mean, we try to do that for every record, really.
Now, are you still writing songs? Like, are you someone who writes songs all the time? Or are you someone who writes songs more when there's a project that you need to do?
A little bit of both. I've written a lot when I'm not trying to write, when I'm just playing guitar. But then when there's a bulk of songs that need more to kind of move it toward being an album, self-imposed deadline kind of thing, then so it's a little bit of both, really.
Was the whole pandemic, lockdown, isolation kind of thing, good or bad for your creativity?
I didn't do it. Yeah, it was such a big distraction. It's still. I don't think I've recovered from it.
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of us. Do you have a new Feelies album that you're working on? Either writing or planning to record?
Well, I've written songs. To be honest, I don't know.
You don't know whether the songs would fit on an album or whether you just want to do an album?
It just doesn't seem like the last one was so much work, to be honest with you. My hearing is so much worse than it was from then. I don't know if it's really that important. I don't know. Are people buying records? Records seem kind of...
Well, vinyl's back now. I saw Newberry Comics had colored vinyl versions of Crazy Rhythms and The Good Earth. I see vinyl of the other records coming out.
Is that really driving the music business? I don't know. It's like a lot of people buy records and they never even open them. They're like souvenirs.
I don't know. I think, like when I was at that show in Jersey City, I picked up some vinyl because something like Time for a Witness came out in 91 when everything was on CD. And unlike, the previous two, I'd never owned that one on vinyl. And it's like, oh, my turntable sounds better than my CD player now. So I should have a version of that. So yeah, the sort of like your sort of 42-minute album is kind of back as a form as opposed to the 70-minute CD. Not that I'm trying to twist your arm and make a new Feelies album.
The pressing plants are so far behind. You got to plan like at least a year in advance. And it's like you record something, then wait a year and put a record out. And it's like,
right. Yeah. Or like
momentum.
Wilco now put it out, digitally. And they're like, the vinyl will come eventually. But these things are cyclical though. I mean, hopefully people will build more pressing plants because there's more demand for quality vinyl. So
it's still fossil fuel based.
Yeah. Well, it would be fun to hear a new. I would not demand of an artist you need to give more because I really love the albums that I have already. But I wouldn't discourage you from making a new album. Are you going to keep playing shows? You'll do some in the New York area. You'll maybe go up to Boston or down to DC or Philly or something. Do you see keeping to that schedule for a while, or is there some end to that in sight as well?
I see the end, to be honest. I mean, we are trying to book show in Boston and DC, but I don't know. It's just hard to travel for me.
Would you keep doing the shows in the, New York, New Jersey area?
It really is not up to me. I mean, I still enjoy playing. I still would want to play.
You guys play these really long shows, which is great. You'll do a set and then you'll take a break and then you'll do another set and then you'll do all these encores with all these great covers in them. Is that something that's sort of physically harder after a while, or is it just sort of like, this is what we do and you guys are good with it?
It hasn't been. It's been, I don't feel that challenged by it. Although I had COVID recently and found still, I don't know, maybe feel like, and I've done a few shows with another band since then. And I don't know if it was from having some time off, but I just felt maybe like 90% back. But yeah, it was a little more challenging.
There's a lot
starting to have some issues with my hand, and we'll see with these shows coming up. But the last ones we played, they weren't difficult at all.
When you get back together, do you have to rehearse, or is it pretty much like everyone knows, you all know what you're doing and you're playing on your own and you put yourselves together and it's off to the races?
We do rehearse. Yeah. We don't rehearse a lot, obviously with Bill being in Florida and Brenda in Pennsylvania, but we always rehearse before performance. And if there's a long break, we'll schedule a rehearsal some point during that break. We all realize that we have to do work on our own too. So it's not only when we're rehearsing with the band, we all do a lot of playing on our own.
Like, will you send out the playlist ahead of time and say, look, these are the songs I want to do?
No, we have a hard time even half hour before showtime getting the songs picked. So we've talked about getting sets worked out in advance, but really never do it.
At what point do you decide what songs to cover, and sort of what's the key to, a great Feelies cover?
Well, the key is we all have to like the song. Could be anything. We really could pick from anything, really. We've actually, the Willies did a Kraftwerk song, so the Feelies have been doing that. So, I mean, we pick from anything, Yeah,
I'd heard you do the Doors, Take It As It Comes, but then last time you were doing Strange Days.
Yeah, we generally try to, every year or every group of shows, we'll try to come up with a new cover just to make it interesting for ourselves too.
And when you cover them, it's always like, this is the Feelies version of that. It's always fun and often surprising if you don't know what's coming up, that you guys have your take on it. And it always kind of lights a little fire under the song and makes you think differently about both.
I don't know if we're talented enough to recreate songs exactly, but we really wouldn't have that desire anyway. It's always, when I see a band cover a song, I want them to do something with it.
Well, and as I said at the beginning of this conversation, the Feelies have such a distinct sound with, the percussion, the way the percussion and the drums work together, the way the two guitars work together, the way all of the elements, the bass, everything. It's the Feelies. And I don't know of anyone who sounds just like it. I've heard bands that I think, oh, they were influenced by you, but I've never heard something that I thought, oh, that like occupies the same or even a similar space. Do you feel that way?
I think every band's like that. It's the combination of the people playing the music that creates something unique. If you don't get that, that's because it's been produced out. The personality of the people playing gets diminished or wiped away by the process. So it's, I think, from us producing ourselves, we allow the process to allow the personalities of the players to come through.
And you also have a distinct vision. I mean, there are a lot of bands out there, and there are a lot of bands that I love. But not every band has such a precise way that they want to present what they're doing and the way they want to approach their music. And it's not to say that everything's the same. It's just that there's a, again, sort of a crispness or precision to, like the way you approach it, where, there are a lot of, two guitar based drums bands, and, the arrangements don't have that kind of, relationship that yours do.
I think it's trying to balance out the conceptual side where you think about the music a lot with the side where you're not thinking and it's passive, and, it's juggling those two extremes, really.
When are you happiest in regards to music? Is it when you're on stage? Is it when you've just made up a song? Is it when you're recording? Like, what are those moments when you feel kind of elevated the most?
There's nothing like a crowd just being so into the song and seeing people singing along and smiling. But then there's been moments where it's just been musicians playing together with no audience, And there's astounding moments that happen then, because there's no ego involved. You're not expecting a reaction. You're not doing it for, your motive is purely, it's pure in the sense that, you just want to create the music. You're not entertaining someone or trying to get a reaction. So when those happen, that's pretty remarkable because, it's totally unexpected and unplanned and, just flashes of interaction of people playing that you realize, hey, this is special.
That's great. I want to thank you because I've had a lot of magical moments listening and seeing the Feelies, and it's a real treat for me to get to talk to you for this. So
well, thank you so much for having me.
That's all for episode 48 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Glenn Mercer for sharing so many great insights and stories about the Feelies and beyond. If you don't own the Feelies catalog, you should. Bar None Records has released all 6 Feelies albums, plus the Young Woo side project on vinyl and CD. Start with Crazy Rhythms and The Good Earth, because you really can't have one without the other, and move forward from there. And look to thefeeliesweb.com for announcements about upcoming shows. Those usually happen on the East Coast and are worth traveling for. You also should seek out Mercer's 2 solo albums and his Wake Ulu output on Chicago's Pravda Records. Caropop is produced by Chris Swake, who always takes the high road, and he says, let's go. I'm Mark Caro. Please follow me on Twitter at Mark Caro, at MarkCaro, and visit the Caropop website, caropop.com, for posts about music, movies, and food, and also this Caropop podcast. Please share, subscribe, and tune in again next week for another Caropop conversation. Thanks.